Hello. Hi guys, happy Monday. I don't know why I'm yawning. Hello. I'll wait just a minute or two while other people can get on here. Hello, Amy. Hello. Okay. So, first, I guess I just wanted to open it up to see if anyone had any questions they wanted to shoot to me while on the live. I mean, we have probably a decent amount of people sewing along last time, or maybe who've already made a Meadowland pattern, so they're not like completely unaware, but there are definitely some new people. And I think as of this morning, we have over 1,800 people signed up, which is bonkers and super exciting. So I've worked a little ahead of you guys just so I could be on top of my stuff and get some of my tutorials done early and do some other things. But yeah, so there's some of my blocks. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about Meadowland or not? I'm scrolling through. I don't see anything. I'm making 3 Meadowlands for the quilt. 3. That's crazy. I mean, totally doable though. They're very addictive blocks to make, at least. Hi from Italy. Hello. Okay, so I guess I'll just do a little rundown of what we'll be doing. And then I have pulled a couple fabric pools just to kind of tell you how I work with fabric. Okay, it starts a week from today. And so next Monday, February 3rd, it'll be 6 weeks long. And the first week will be pulling your fabric together and getting it all cut, and then mixing and matching the cuts into your basically like block piles. And I just saw someone say efficient way to cut fat quarters. So if you have the pattern, I have a complete diagram in the pattern already that is the most efficient way to cut your fat quarter. So I would follow that diagram, and it has measurements so you can figure out which way to start cutting your fabric. And yeah, so a couple of these. So it's in the pattern. That's how I cut my fat quarters every time. There's not like a more efficient way in my mind to get your pieces cut out of there. If you're comfortable, I would even stack 2 to 3 fat quarters on top of each other and then cut 2 to 3 at a time. But if you're new, I would definitely start with cutting a single fat quarter until you kind of get your rhythm and you figure out like mentally how it makes sense to you. But there is a diagram in the pattern itself for cutting fat quarters. Also, I believe in the first week I send a different fat quarter or a different cutting diagram for directional prints if you want the bars to be directional. To me, it's never mattered, but some people like that. I do use a regular quilting ruler. So I use OmniGrids is my favorite ruler sets because they have kind of this like grippy, rough part, so it doesn't slide as easy on the fabric when you're cutting. And I use your normal 6.5 by 24 inch. And then I also have a 6.5 inch square, and I like using, it's not necessary, but I like using 3.5 by 12 inch ruler for some of like subcutting some of the smaller parts. Flying geese, hold on, I'm kind of scrolling up. My flying geese seemed a little large for the squares. Can you explain or help? So flying geese, I have also another tutorial that will be coming out on week 2 for directional prints, because I'm just gonna say, I'm not gonna answer any questions about directionality or your seams not matching in week 1, because that's not week 1. Week 1 is fabric, is getting it cut, is mixing and matching your fabric. Week 2, we're sewing. So I'm not ignoring them now, but I'm saying, like, if I get messages or emails, you're working ahead of me, so I'm not there yet. So I'm gonna be focusing on all the things to get you set up to sew and to make your blocks correct. But I will say that if you're doing like a practice one, your 1/4 inch seam is what I would look at. And then you can trim if you want your flying geese. Most of the time, as long as your 1/4 inch seam and like your cuts, you know, like make sure that your big square is truly the correct size. Make sure your little squares that are getting sewn on are the correct size, because 1/8 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch is a 1/4 inch. So it can really vastly change your accuracy if your cutting's not correct, if your 1/4 inch seam is not correct, because those definitely add up. So that's always my bit of advice, is like really watch when you're cutting and really watch when you're sewing your 1/4 inch seams, because those can make a big difference. What else? I don't think I saw another thing come through. Hi. So week 1 is fabric pool, cutting, mixing and matching within your blocks. And the quilt I'm going to be making, and the size I'm kind of just like promoting and basing the quilt along off of, is the large throw, which is the front cover pattern, and it is the 64 inch by 80 inch. So it's a 20 block quilt. So that's the one I'm kind of basing it off of. You can make any size you want that I give measurements for. But this is just going to be the one I'm talking about, because this is how I'm dividing the quilt along, as if you're making 20 blocks. And yeah, so this one, as an example, is made out of 1/2 yard cuts. So the difference for this quilt along, I'm using fat quarters. And essentially this is the easiest math. You have 20 blocks, 1 fat quarter equates to 1 block. Not that the single fat quarter is going to be the same fabrics in a block, but essentially 1 fat quarter equates to the amount of fabric cuts you need for a single block. So 20 fat quarters, 20 blocks. If you do 1/2 yards, which is this, which you can see is still really fun, and like there's a lot of movement and depth, but it's more consistent of a look because you have fabrics repeating at least twice. So 1/2 yard, which is 2 fat quarters essentially, gives you 2 blocks. So you would need 10 1/2 yard cuts, and you still mix and match all the same, no matter what, if you're going scrappy, if you're doing 1/2 yards, if you're doing fat quarters. I mean, you can truly mix whatever you want as long as it still equates to your 20 blocks. So you could do 8 1/2 yards and then 4 fat quarters, like if you're using your stash, and that's totally up to you. That's all fine and dandy. But the blah, 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 blah. The version I'm doing is fat quarters. But obviously I have made it in 1/2 yards, and I give all that information on the back as well. You can see, 20 fat quarters or 10 1/2 yard cuts. So that's that. The 2 fabric pulls that I pulled today are based on fat quarters, which I guess I just said blah, blah. Okay. So I pulled these from my stash, and this is going to be a little bit more like how I pull fabric and how I view like fabric relationships within a quilt when you're pulling for really any quilt, but this will be a little bit more specific to Meadowland. So in a Meadowland block, I should just get my blocks so I can reference. So I'm going to flip this around if I can. Is it going to do it? Here we go. Okay. So here's a finished Meadowland block. And you're gonna have background, which is the white in this, and then 3 colors. Your outer geese, your inner diamond with these squares being the same color as that, and then your bars. So one of the things I think about, which I love with this pattern, you can see that you can get a lot of depth and variance of like, see this block, that inner diamond, this darker pink stands out. But in this block, because the outer diamond and the inner diamond and the outer flying geese are very similar in tone, it kind of is like glowy. And then this one has a darker outer flying geese, so it kind of like frames it. So there, and then this one, your darkest piece are the squares. So I think that's, or the bars that I call. So that's what I really love about this pattern, is there's so much play with depth because of how I pull my fabric. And what I mean by that is that I try to stick to probably 3 to 4 what I call color families. So in this example, we have like pinky purples, we've got peaches, yellows, and blues. So that's 4 color families. And then within them, I play within kind of a gradient of them to get a little bit of tone, a little bit of different saturation. And then that's what gives us this really fun glowy effect, I guess I call it. And so I take that same idea all the time with Meadowland. And so I'll start first with this bundle. And this is a mixture of my stash, and it's a lot of Trixie by Heather Ross, and then like some fun little ginghams, some of the new speckled from Ruby Star. And as you can see, I've kind of stacked it in color order, or family order, which means here's your greens, your teals, peaches, and then like pinks with that little pop of orange at the end because it matches those. So that, like I said, this is 4 color families that I have put in color order. And I think that's like my biggest help to you guys, is say it wasn't in color order and they were all like mixed in, all random, and it's hard to see how they relate to each other. I feel like that's how people get really overwhelmed, because it looks a little crazy and a little messy, and people are like, how do you do that? I don't understand how you do it. Like, I'm just really kind of throwing colors on top of each other. So like that, when you look at it now visually, to me is chaotic and is really hard to see how your fabrics are going to relate to each other. And I think that's where people kind of get stumped, because they're like, well, this looks a little overwhelming and I don't know how these are actually going to relate to each other or how they're going to all look good. Like, man, this orange next to this white looks crazy. But then, you know, your teals and your blues, they all get mixed up. So what I do, which is what I did right before this, is I lay them out by their color family. And then this is where you get to see what it looks like and how they're going to be relating to each other in the quilt. And then you also get to see like, oh, I feel like this one needs more in its family or in its color. So what did I do? And then this, I'm just going to pause and say was my inspiration print. So this has like, I mean, and that's the benefit of using, say, a single line from a fabric designer, is because they're already going to have like curated a really balanced bundle, because that's how they sell their fabrics, right? All their fabrics go together. So this is kind of what I based my bundle off of, is highlighting the greens, highlighting the teals, and then highlighting the pinks with a tiny bit of orange. And so that's the print that I kind of used when I was doing this morning. Okay, so then I kind of put that there, and now I'm going to go towards the teals. And then this is like a fun way to see how they relate. You know, you have orange and you have pink in this green one, same here. Then you have some lime green and some pink. And so you can see how, like, even though it seems like a lot, that it, to me, visually makes sense. And that's how sometimes you can decide, like, oh, I want to pop a pink because there's a little bit of pink in this one, even though it's reading teal. And so, okay, so here I am. I'm trying to figure out where I am. Okay, so then at the end, I'm putting this like really light green, which technically I totally could have put over here, but this just reads lighter to me because there's so much white in it and it's a lighter green. And then I'm kind of starting to switch over. So I have a really light color, which is fun because when you put it next to white, it really still pops. Like that's just Kona white. But it is lighter, and it's going to be the lightest one, which will add that fun glowy effect once they're all together. And then I'm starting to go towards the pinks that we've got going on. And these little cute, look at those cute little mice. And then this is more speckled. So as you can see, like it's starting to get into the deeper pinks. So we've got a little gingham, got this pink. So this is then where I decide, okay, so here's where I want a little bit of orange coming in because of these reds. And so I have one that definitely highlights these orangey colors. And then more gingham, and then a darker. So this is 20 fat quarters, which is exactly what we'll be using in the sew along if you're doing, the fat quarter version. So now you can see how they all relate together. And then there's a really fun mixture of small prints, some larger scale prints, some classics like gingham, and then these speckled, are really fun because they kind of act like a solid, which is really nice. So I think that's fun when you kind of play with scale of your prints as well. None of these are super large scale. Like that's probably the largest scale print for this collection. But that's how I did this one. So I hope that encourage you guys and makes sense. So you've got greens, teals, peaches, and then the pink oranges. And now you can see it's a really nice, pretty gradient. Why did you put the light blue and light pink in the same family, new quilter? Well, I hope me explaining this explains it to that question if I had missed it. Okay, and then I did this one, which is super similar to the bundle I curated with Christina, but this was my base bundle that I made with her and sent her pictures being I want it to do this, but I wanted to use some other Ruby Star Society basics, but I didn't have all of them. So I kind of used speckled as my main color base. And then we worked to pop in, some other Ruby Star things so it's not just speckled, but I'll show you kind of how I did this one. So it's the same idea, keeping it all within kind of how I'm doing color families. And so we're starting light, and like I said, these speckled are so fun. And so these were the idea of using this, which is called Lindley Lawn, using some of those as a pop of floral throughout the quilt, and then have other colors that base off of it. So as you can see, I'm kind of this is a neon pink on this natural looking, and then we get kind of sand colored. We go officially peaches, and we're starting to petally purples all the way to a hot pink. And then this is kind of where I threw in Lindley, and now you can see look how pretty that is, right? And this all was based off to pulling from these colors, pulling these pinks, pulling peaches. This pink kind of is purpley too, so I feel that's why this played really well with it. And now I'm going into kind of your warmer tones of some of the reds. Hello guys. To a brighter purple, and now I'm coming back down with a different color family, which is going to be, oh my goodness, the golds or yellows, whatever you want to say. That's a brighter yellow. And now you can see partway through, super pretty. So this would be gorgeous, if you did half yards and you wanted this whole color palette. But I'm bringing in blues, and then I'm going to end it with a couple pops of color, which is slightly different from my other ones. So this is how, when I look at it, your blues are relating here already. And then you have your oranges and your orangies here, and your peaches over here. So even though I'm adding this big pop of blue, I still have used this to help build behind it. And then I'm gonna make blue an actual color family in this setup. And here's a little bit of gray. So that's where we're at so far. Lastly, I'm adding this one in, which here, this one and this one are like a really fun match. We've got this warm red with these reds here, the darker blues here. So these kind of all relate well. And now I'm kind of finishing it out with some orange. And technically this orange could have gone, you know, like in here or next to this, but I kind of wanted you to see what it's like with the florals in between. And then this is the fun idea I like doing sometimes, which is taking two colors that aren't a part of the family, but add this kind of like punch because they play off, and added black and this like citron-y, like lime green. And so that is 20 fat quarters there. And the quilt-along starts on a week from today. So this is just giving people a whole week beforehand to think about fabric choices, look through their stash, decide if they want to just buy an already done bundle, because there's so many amazing shops kitting them. And I mean, 20 fat quarter bundle is a pretty common number of fat quarters. So if you just find one in a shop, like boom, super easy, decision made, just pick your background. But I'm doing this ahead of time since I don't really, week one doesn't really allow for like too much debate, since you have to also cut and mix and match. But this is just kind of how I view color families. And so this is basically about 4 with a couple pops. So you kind of have your like pinks. You've got some of your deeper so you have kind of like your light pinks, peaches. You've got some of your deeper pinks and reds, some golds, and I'd call that like a burnt orange gold, and then some blues, and then you have your 2 pops of color. So that idea of 3 to 4 color families is still the same in this. So you can see like this is a slightly smoother progression of color, and it's really pretty, and this one's a little bit more poppy and in your face, but still works. You would sign up by, if you go to my like my profile when you're done and click the link in it, one of the first links is sign up for the Meadowland Quilt Along, and all the information you can find is on my website on how to participate. But yeah, we have a week between now and the official start. So that's kind of what about fabric selection. And yeah, so I hope this was helpful. I don't know if there's any other questions, and if you do have questions, just shoot me an email between whenever, now and the start. The pattern's still discounted until Monday, so through Sunday, the pattern will still be a couple dollars off. But the first day of the quilt along, the pattern will go up to regular pricing because it's been on discount for over a month now. Or a month now, whatever. But I hope this was helpful. I'm going to save this video, if I do it correctly, and I'll upload it to my YouTube channel so it can live there for forever. And my YouTube is not like, I don't YouTube, but it's just like the dumping zone for videos. Will you talk more about grouping fabrics for wax? Absolutely. There's a big part of that in week 1 and the newsletter. I just don't want to talk now about it. Like, this is just to help you form your fabric bundle and give you confidence. And then week 1, I talk about like how to mix and match your fabrics within a block. And that's my absolute favorite part of this pattern, is doing that. So I do a lot of stuff about that in week 1's newsletter. Do you think doing prints for a majority of the fabrics? Absolutely not. I've done multiple Meadowlands and all prints without a single solid. But it's up to you. Like, if it feels too chaotic for you, totally fine. Do whatever you want. I've done Meadowland Scrappy. I've done it all solids. I've done it all prints. I've done it solids and prints. If you go to my website, you'll see, I think in the blog post, I put every photo I've ever made of a Meadowland. Not every photo, but every version, which I've made now 10. This is my 11th. So there is a ton of options. And also just look at the Meadowland Quilt Along hashtag or the Meadowland Quilt hashtag, and you're going to get so much inspiration and see what people have done. And then, do you think so So if you have an inspiration fabric and you put 2 pieces of that, how does it, if you have inspiration and you put 2 pieces of that, how does it change your quilt? I guess I'm slightly confused by that question. I've totally done it where I start with the inspiration fabric and build off of that and end up not using the inspiration fabric, but say you just like, you loved the colors in it. Or you can use it within it. So it's just gonna change. So essentially, I have seen some Meadowlands out there which look really cool and they only use 2 colors in a single block. So here, like, I'll turn this block around so I can tell you what I mean. So like the outer geese here and the bars are the same print, and then the background and the inner are 1 print, so it's like only 2. And I don't give instructions for that. I don't give material requirements for that, so I'm not going to talk about that, but you can see it and it's pretty easy to figure out on your own. But can you use an inspiration as background? Totally. And Ev Quilts, at Ev Quilts, she has made a couple Meadowlands where the background is a main print, like a colorful floral, and then she uses like solids in the 3 positions in the block, and it's super cool looking, really fun. And so she's done that, and so you will find inspiration on the internet to be able to use your inspiration as the background. It's totally up to you. This pattern is super versatile. I really haven't seen a single one that looks terrible, like regardless of picking your colors or anything. It's really fun because you get variety from every single block because of the way that we mix and match. So like, it's just really, really fun. So I'll just show you a few of these so you can see. See? You get so much variety just by mixing and matching, and like how different a block can look. And that's what we talk about in week 1, is how to mix and match, how to build your blocks so that you get a lot of that variety and depth. So yeah. Let's see. Anything else? My flowers are dying, but they're still so pretty. Rotating back. Okay. But yes, if you do have a question between now and then, feel free to shoot me an email. Direct messages just get lost on here because they go into like a hidden folder, so I have to go in and intentionally check them, and it's just email me. I like emails better. Yeah, but I'm excited. 1,800 of you. That's nuts. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that is the correct one. And she made them a couple years ago, so you might have to scroll a little bit into her feed, but she has quite a few Meadowland examples. And I think she also put a tutorial on her blog about how she used the background as inspiration, I think. So if you follow her and then go to her website, which it's linked, I believe she has a link in it in her profile, you should be able to like type in Meadowlands, and I think you'll be able to find it. But yeah, it's super easy to do. And I can't wait. I've seen so many people, already posting their pools, or like they've cut and they're just jumping ahead a bit, but they're looking really good and I'm excited. But yeah, so thank you guys. Like I said, I'll try to say, I hopefully will say this correctly, and I will put it onto YouTube, and then it'll live on Instagram for like 24 hours, but my internet unfortunately is out today. For some reason, we're trying to get it back up, so it probably won't get loaded to YouTube today, maybe tomorrow, hopefully. But I'll send a link to it as well in the first week's newsletter. Okay. Bye guys, happy Monday.